Hi guys, today we're diving into something that every wireless VR player eventually bumps into, that moment when your headset starts to stutter, the bitrate tanks, or the whole thing just feels off. Wireless VR is incredible when it works, but it's also one of the most demanding things you can throw at your home network. So in this video, I want to walk you through exactly how to build a setup that actually works, reliable, consistent, and without all the frustration. If you're looking for something software related, well, this video probably isn't for you. But I did do a piece on using virtual desktop and how I get decent wireless performance out of it. And that's all about the software side of things. This video though is about sorting out your network, the hardware, the setup, and the tweaks that makes wireless VR actually work the way you want it. The first thing to understand is that wireless VR isn't like streaming a movie or watching YouTube. Your headset is pulling in a constant stream of high resolution video, 100, sometimes 200 megabits per second, sometimes even higher than that depending on your protocol. And it needs that data right now. There's no buffer, no safety net. If your network hesitates for even a moment, you feel it instantly. That's why so many people struggle. The demands are high and most home networks simply aren't built for this. Before we even get into the complexities of wireless VR, there's one absolute non-negotiable rule that you should follow. Your gaming PC needs to be connected to your router with an Ethernet cable. Wireless VR already pushes your network to its limits. You need high bitrate encoding, low latency, and constant two-way communication. If your PC is also trying to send all of those things over Wi-Fi, you're doubling the load, doubling the interference, and introducing a whole new layer of instability. A wired Ethernet connection gives you consistent rock-solid bandwidth, low latency, zero wireless interference, and a stable foundation for your VR stream to build on. Think of it like this. Your VR headset is already doing the hard part by staying wireless. Your PC doesn't need to join that struggle. So before you tweak settings, before you buy new hardware, before you even think about 6 GHz or mesh networks, run that Ethernet cable. It's the simplest upgrade you can make, and it solves half the problems people run into with wireless VR. Let's talk about the cheapest option people reach for, a USB Wi-Fi dongle. On paper, it sounds ideal. Plug it in, instant wireless, job done. But for PCVR, it's one of the worst choices you could make. A standard Wi-Fi dongle relies entirely on Windows to manage high bandwidth, low latency traffic. And Windows is, let's just say, not designed to handle the kind of real-time 200 megabit video stream that virtual desktop or AirLink needs. The result is usually unstable throughput, random latency spikes, driver issues, poor antenna performance, and a general feeling of why does this feel worse than it should. Dedicated proprietary dongles like the D-Link VR AirBridge are built specifically to bypass those Windows limitations, and future systems like the Steam Deck headset will likely use similar tech. But a generic Wi-Fi dongle is simply not up to the job. So while it might look like the cheapest solution, it's actually a false economy. You'll spend more time troubleshooting than playing. Now, one of the biggest upgrades you can make for wireless VR is moving to a Wi-Fi 6E or 7 router that will support the 6 GHz band. And on paper, 6 GHz looks like the holy grail. It's clean, it's quiet, and it's nowhere near as congested as 5 GHz. And that means fewer neighbors stomping all over your signal, fewer competing devices, and a much better chance of maintaining that buttery smooth bitrate required for your virtual desktop stream. But, and this is the part a lot of people don't realize, 6 GHz comes with a trade-off. It doesn't travel as far, and it doesn't penetrate walls as well. There are a few reasons for that. Higher frequencies lose energy faster as they travel through the air, so the usable range drops off much more quickly. Walls, floors and furniture absorb 6 GHz more aggressively than 5 GHz, so even a single wall can tank your signal. Your headset's antennas are tiny and they struggle more with higher frequency signals unless you're relatively close to the router. And because 6 GHz is still new, not every device in your home supports it, which means your network may still fall back to 5 GHz for certain tasks. So yes, 6 GHz can absolutely give you a cleaner, more stable VR stream, but only if your router is positioned well and your play space is within that sweet spot of coverage. Well, what about a mesh network? That puts a closer node in my play space. Surely that's ideal for VR. And on the surface, yeah, it sounds perfect. A mesh node right next to your headset means a stronger signal, lower distance and potentially better throughput. But here's the catch. Mesh systems don't give you a direct dedicated connection. They relay everything back to your main router, and that relay, the backhaul, is where things fall apart for wireless VR. Because that mesh node is piggybacking off your primary router, you're actually adding more traffic, more hops and more congestion to your network. Instead of giving your VR stream a clean lane, you're forcing it to share the road with the mesh backhaul chatter. And the result? Stutters, micro lags, random frame drops, exactly the kind of stuff that ruins a virtual desktop session. Sure, sometimes you can get a decent connection out of a mesh node if you're lucky with placement and the home layout, but more often than not, they cause more trouble than some much cheaper, simpler alternatives. So let's talk about the other end of the spectrum, proper enterprise style networking. Systems like Unify with wired Ethernet backbones and dedicated access points are absolutely fantastic for wireless VR. In fact, if you've already got a Unify setup in your home, you can go one step further and create a dedicated VR access point, a clean, isolated lane just for your headset. And that's about as good as it gets. If you're already in that ecosystem, something like the U7 Pro is a brilliant upgrade. It supports the 6 GHz band, it's rock solid, and at about £150 is actually a cost-effective addition because you've already paid for the Dream router, the controller, the switches, all that expensive stuff. But if you don't already own all that, well, this is where reality kicks in. A full Unify setup with a Dream router, a managed switch, multiple access points can easily run you several hundred, maybe even £1,000 or more. And that's before you even get into the learning curve of setting it all up. VLANs, SSIDs, channel planning, controller management is powerful, but it's not plug and play. So yes, enterprise gear is incredible for VR, but for most of us, it's simply overkill, both in cost and complexity. All right. Let's flip things back around and talk about something far more realistic, and honestly, one of the best solutions for wireless VR without spending a fortune. Instead of buying a full mesh system or dropping hundreds on enterprise gear, you can simply run an Ethernet cable to a second router and place that router right in your play space. This gives you the best of both worlds. A wired backbone for maximum stability, a dedicated access point for your VR headset, and total control over how that little VR-only network behaves. You set it up with its own separate SSID on its own clean channel, completely isolated from the chaos of your main home network. No smart TVs, no phones, no tablets, no neighbors. None of those things will be stomping over your signal. Just your gaming PC and your headset talking directly to each other. This minimizes interference, maximizes signal strength, and gives your VR stream the cleanest low latency path possible. And the best bit? It's cheap, it's simple, and it works ridiculously well. So continuing down those lines, let's talk about routers you might want to try. These have been tested and verified and marked as preferred for virtual desktop for wireless VR streaming, except for one budget outlier, but we'll explain that in a moment. First up, the budget option, a TP-Link Archer C6. The Archer is not a preferred device for wireless VR. It is included only as a last resort budget option for people who want the cheapest possible dedicated VR router. It works, but it lacks modern features and shouldn't be your first choice. It only does Wi-Fi 5 doesn't have DFS support, but its price is really low. Couldn't find it in the US, but in the UK it's 29 to 35 pounds, and in Europe it's around 40 euros. It's extremely cheap. It works surprisingly well when only for VR. It doesn't have 6E or 6 gigahertz. It's not going to be future-proof. It's also not really suitable as a main router. This is best for people who want the absolute cheapest way to isolate their VR traffic on its own network. Next up, we move into the preferred territory. These are a bit more expensive, but they should give you a little bit more future-proofing. So first up, we have the TP-Link BE9300 or BE550 as it is sometimes known. This is a Wi-Fi 7 router, so that does mean it supports 6 gigahertz. It has DFS support. It's priced at around 150 to 160 pounds in the UK, $200 US, or about 180 euros in Europe. It supports a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet backbone. So this is probably going to give you a very stable VR experience, but it is a bit more expensive. So this is for users who want a powerful, pretty much future-proof router that doubles as a rock-solid 6E access point. Slightly cheaper than that, we have the TP-Link Archer AXE75, also known as the AXE5400. This is a mid-range Wi-Fi 6E workhorse. It still has DFS support. It is priced at about £130 UK, $150 or 140 euros. It gives you a very nice, reliable 6E performance with a strong signal quality. It's a good balance of price and performance. It's easy to configure as a dedicated router, but it doesn't have multi-gig Ethernet ports and it doesn't support Wi-Fi 7. So this is really for people who are wanting a more dependable mid-range router that performs consistently well for VR and doesn't break the bank. So what happens if you simply can't run an Ethernet cable to your play space? Maybe you're renting, maybe the router is on another floor, maybe the cable run would look like a trip hazard designed by Wile E. Coyote. Whatever the reason, not everyone can run a clean wired backbone. Most people jump straight to a mesh network as a solution, and yes, a mesh node near your play space sounds great until you remember that mesh systems rely on a wireless backhaul, as we mentioned before. That means your VR traffic still has those multiple hops, so this is just adding extra congestion, which is not ideal. But there is another option, and it's usually cheaper too. That's powerline adapters. A powerline adapter uses your home's electrical networking to carry network data. In theory, this gives you a wired-like connection without running a cable, lower latency than a mesh, more stable throughput, a cleaner path for your VR traffic. It's basically Ethernet without the Ethernet. But here's the catch, and it's quite a big one. Powerline performance depends entirely on your home's wiring. If your wiring is modern, clean, and on the same circuit, powerline can be fantastic. If your wiring is old, noisy, or split across multiple breakers, powerline can be, well, unusable. So the advice here is simple. Buy powerline adapters from somewhere with easy returns. If your wiring is good, you get a stable, low latency link that beats mesh every time. If your wiring is bad, you know immediately and you can send them back. And then you can think about, as a last resort, using mesh. At the end of the day, wireless VR is one of the most demanding things you can throw at a home network. We're pushing over 200 megabits of real-time video with almost low latency. And we're doing it in a radio environment that's already packed with phones, laptops, TVs, microwaves, your fridge freezer, you name it. So let's boil things down. Enterprise Wi-Fi is amazing, but overkill for most people. If you already have a Unify or Armada set up in your home, then honestly, you're in a fantastic position. Adding a dedicated 6 GHz access point like the U7 Pro is relatively cheap, and you get rock solid performance with proper channel control, wired backhaul, and clean isolation. But if you don't already own that gear, it's overkill. You don't need a dream router, managed switches, and controller software just to play games. It's powerful but expensive, and it's not the most accessible route for many VR players. The best real-world option is a dedicated router. For the majority of people, That's the sweet spot. And if you want a recommendation, I would go for the TP-Link Axe 5400. It's the perfect all-rounder. Not the flashiest, not the most future-proof, but it's stable, reliable, and will give gamers years of good performance before they ever have to think about upgrading. Pair it with a clean SSID, DFS channels, and good placement, and you're already ahead of 90% of home networks. And please, wire your PC. This is one thing I'll shout from the rooftops. Run Ethernet from your dedicated router to your gaming PC. It removes half of the variables, half the interference, and half the headaches. It's the single best upgrade you can make to your VR streaming setup. If you can't run Ethernet, try a powerline adapter. And as a last resort, use mesh. And finally, the future. Here's the fun part. Everything we've talked about might become irrelevant sooner than you think. Valve's upcoming Steam Machine and Steam Frame setup will include a dedicated VR wireless dongle, a proprietary low latency high bandwidth link designed specifically for PCVR. If that becomes the new standard, no more worrying about routers, there's no more channel planning, no more interference. We just plug it in and go. And that will be the best for all of us. And I hope it happens soon. The moment we get universal dedicated VR wireless links, the entire VR community levels up overnight. I hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive into setting up a wireless VR play space. And if you have, don't forget to hit that like button. If you enjoy what I'm doing here at TDVR and I want to see some more things, think about subscribing. Hopefully you won't regret it. Until next time guys, ta-ra for now. Bye bye.